Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Krashy, and today we're diving into my updated jungle tier list. I think this is what I'm going to focus on in terms of doing tier list videos, and I like this format where I just kind of throw it on the screen and then we talk about it a little bit, so you can get the information if you want to and kind of get my thoughts. It's not very nuanced, or you can kind of stick around and listen to what I have to say. This one was a really hard one to make. I got to be completely honest. I think that the balance of the game is actually really good, and so we're going to go ahead and dive into it. I'm going to start from the bottom and work my way up. D tier Grux, dude, this guy can't jungle. It's like super funny. I mean, he hasn't ever really been good at jungling, but now there's more and more options, and he just can't. Like, he can't do it. He's only a gank heavy jungler. You tend to fall behind. His clear sucks. His abilities are not meant for jungling. I only put him on the list because, like, yeah, he can technically do it, but he really can't jungle. Now, same with Iggy. I put Iggy on the list because I actually think that there could be really niche team comps that could maybe take advantage of an Iggy jungle. But it's not really a jungler, right? It's not really a jungler. He kind of struggles and takes a little bit of damage jungling, but you can actually make it work, and you can scale him and you can hyper farm with him, but he doesn't really have any gank presence until like level 6. And even then, it's like, when I play Iggy jungle, I just farm my butt off and kind of go crazy and then bring him to the late game with kind of like what I think is like, if you're playing him mid, I don't really know what the main mid builds are for him yet because he's just so new, but you might go more of a damage focused build. When I play him jungle, I bring like a Megacosm and then kind of like a bruiser build on him. So just an interesting way that you can play him. You can still build him for poke with Megacosm. You can build like the Orb of Enlightenment and kind of scale him and then bring some of the HP magic power items on him. Now, Steel Jungle. Steel Jungle is low. And the reason why Steel Jungle is low is not because I think that it's bad. And also, for the sake of saying, this is kind of like a solo queue tier list. Not because I think that he's bad. It's just that his clear time is slow and he's got good ganks. But when you're playing Steel Jungle, it's really just because you want to steal. And that's fine. I think that still makes it really good. The crazy thing about this tier list is that I don't think the gap from, like, say, A to C tier is very big at all. And with some of the choices that I'm going to talk about, I had a really hard time placing them in a position anyways. So Steel Jungle just happens to kind of be lower on here because I think that some of the other junglers just are a little bit better, like barely a little bit better. Steel Jungle's just a little bit slow, but it's still good. I've always advocated for Steel Jungle. I've played Steel Jungle in tournaments before. I just think that he's a good pick. Steel is a good hero, so playing him anywhere on the map where you can get him farm or get him items is solid. He's just not the best jungler in the world. Now, looking at B tier, this one was probably the hardest tier to make for me personally. Zarus, the only reason why I don't have him in A tier is because he's a phenomenal laner. Like, he's probably one of the best off laners in the game. And so I just think, like, when it's the kind of the same thing with Steel, it's like when you play Zarus jungle, it's kind of just because you want him. You just want to play him, right? And so as far as just being a true jungler goes, he's not really the best jungler out there, but you can play him because he's a fine jungler, and I think that that's totally fine if you really want to. He's got pretty solid ganks because you can just, like, dash in, flash in, use ult, has a stun, like, he does good damage. Zarus is a great hero. Having him on a team is great. He's honestly phenomenal, so I think that that's why it makes it perfect to put him right there in the B tier. He's a really good laner. He's a pretty damn good jungler, but I'm going to put him in the B tier because I think, like, you usually don't need to have a Zarus, but bringing him in jungle is going to be pretty awesome. Sevarog is crazy strong, and I think Sevarog jungle is pretty good, but you kind of just have to farm with him, and then, like, you know, you can get online at 6 and kind of bring his influence into the rest of the map. I think that there's also a bit of a personal bias here. I'm just not really a big Sev enjoyer myself, so I don't put a lot of playtime on him, and so then from patch to patch, items change and whatnot. I just don't get overly excited about Sevarog. I think he's solid. Like, if you want to farm up a jungler, a tank, you can definitely do it with Sevarog. I just don't think he's the best jungler for the tanks of jungling, right? He probably has slightly better clear time than Steel, and, you know, you can farm him and just get really big. But yeah, Sevarog's just not my favorite jungler. I think he's pretty good, and that's why I put him in the B tier. Kallari is probably higher than I would put her, say, on like a competitive tier list, because of her carry potential. I honestly had a really hard time, like I was saying, placing Kallari, Shinbi, and Countess because they all three have potential to get really fed and just dominate a game in solo queue. So I kind of wanted to put all of them in A tier, but I don't want to overly stack the A tier. But Kallari, it's really simple. If Kallari gets fed, Kallari can be the reason why your team wins a game. She can just get really ridiculous, but all things considered, Kallari doesn't really scale super well. well. In the late game, she only has potential to like execute a squishy target and then run away. So her team fight's not great unless the team fight like creates that opportunity, and the Kalari is good enough to create that opportunity. So it's not that Kalari has a terrible late game, but she's definitely a little unique to fight with, and your team's gonna have to take the fights the right way and know that they need to kind of like let you look for a pick and fight around your pick potentially. So I do think that Kalari's pretty good. She has crazy carry potential if you can get really fed, but she's just not the strongest jungler out there. It's the same thing with Shinbi. Shinbi's a crazy farmer. This character can get so ahead just from farming. She just farms and farms and farms, and then she gets some items online, she gets her level 6, and she starts to take off. Shinbi's really, really strong. Again, I think more specifically with Shinbi and Countess, I wanted to put both of them in A tier. Countess jungle, same thing. She gets really, really strong. She scales crazy. Countess is like the mage Sevarog jungle, right? She just scales so basically infinitely. The longer the game goes on, the more and more dangerous she becomes. And with new items like the Spirit of Amir for both Shinbi and Countess, I think Shinbi, I'm not sure, I'm still experimenting with builds for Shinbi right now, but with items like that you can first buy like into a megacosm, I think that it's really, really good for their jungle potential. So I think both of them got a boost in the jungle a little bit. Countess probably more so than Shinbi. I'm not really sure. I don't actually know. But they feel pretty solid. Both of them are basically encroaching that A tier, and I feel pretty comfortable with them. Honestly, if you're talking about my personal preference, I probably prefer playing both of them over Feng Mao. But let's go ahead and talk about the A tier with Feng Mao. Feng Mao, it's the same thing. He's just a really, really strong character. He has really great team fight, really great execute potential, really great pick potential. His mobility is off the charts, and he just kind of creates problems. So I think Feng Mao is a phenomenal jungler. I think he has a really, really great clear. I think he scales well. He is kind of like a farm your butt off to 6. There's so many characters where you just like farm your ass off to 6, and then you just really start stepping on the gas and trying to create opportunities. And the same could be said about Crunch, right? I think Crunch is probably even maybe a little too high on this list, to be honest, because I'm the more I'm looking at it, and I feel like I've done this before with tier lists, I want to say that he probably belongs like down here, and some of these people I really could move up. Like even this list looks so similar to me, or looks so like acceptable to me. I'm gonna leave it alone for the sake of just leaving it alone, but dude, so many of these picks are so close to A tier. I think Kalari is like a pretty confident B tier. Sevarog's pretty confident in B tier, but man, I really could pull Crunch down a little bit. I could put Shinbi Countess up, but Crunch, he's so strong, and the crazy thing with Crunch right now is that he has so much build diversity. Like there's so many items. If you want to go a tanky version of Crunch, if you want to do a big damage on Crunch, you can build him well, and I think that Crunch just brings a lot to a team. He gets really shut down by silences, but brings so much to the team. Now, Rampage, the reason why I have Rampage so high, especially for solo queue, is because I don't actually think he's the strongest in the game right now for jungle, but he's incredibly consistent in solo queue. Like his gank potential is crazy with rocks. You know that you're going to get a solid jungler that's going to build a bunch of strong tank items. The new Giant's Ring fits amazingly with him, and you know that you're going to be able to scale him toward the mid and the late game just nice and linearly. Like you can get fed on him, you can influence the early mid game, you can scale him into late game. He's going to have presence, he's always going to be consistent. Rampage is just really, really consistent. I think he's a really, really solid jungler. I think that his stock rose a little bit with Giant's Ring, and I think that he's just been kind of underrated for a little bit, maybe. Like he just kind of sat to the back burner because people weren't thinking he was so good. But I think he's really, really solid. Now, Sereth. Sereth is actually not even the strongest hero in the game, but her carry potential is insane. I was really thinking about putting her in S tier, especially for solo queue, because if you get fed on Sereth, she just wins the game. Like you build her in like, I've got a few builds I'm messing with, but my main one is just like a very carry focus kind of build, and you just kind of clean up everything, or you start off the fight by killing everything. You just have to play her right, and you have to kind of get through that like sluggish early game, because her really like early jungle, like it feels like shit no matter what. It always feel really like slow and sluggish, but she's just so ridiculously incredible. Now let's talk about the S tier. Chimera, he's still sitting pretty in the S tier because he's just easy. He's easy, he farms well, he team fights well, he can chase well, he can gank well, he has crazy objective presence because of so much healing, and that's the biggest thing. He's just easy, man. He's easy and he's strong, and yeah, He's just really, really consistent, especially in solo queue when you're invading. They don't maybe have the fastest reactions to you, so then you can invade, steal a camp, or invade, get a kill. You can force objectives without taking any damage. Like, he just creates a lot of problems. So Chimera sitting pretty in the S tier, right next to Greystone. Greystone is crazy. He's just this unkillable damage dealing bruiser tank. He creates time, he creates space, he does damage. He doesn't bring any CC to the table outside of his little slow, but he's just like broken, and he's so strong right now. It feels like some pretty solid items that have come out for him. I think something like Elefrost is like pretty good on him, maybe if you're doing like an Overlord build, which I've kind of pulled away from a little bit. But I think that you can go like Double Tainted on him. I think you can go Giant String on him. Fire Blossom is great on him, obviously. Unbroken Will is a broken item for basically any tank that potentially needs the healing and the magic armor. So I just think Greystone feels like he's in a really solid position. You can build damage on him, like I said, with an Overlord, or bring like a Basilisk. Citadel on characters like Greystone are phenomenal. Same with Chimera, sorry. So you can brings additional damage and kind of like penetration to the team. And last but not least, let's talk about Richter. Richter is busted. Like, he's just like, I was literally thinking about it last night while I was streaming. I was like, how do you balance Richter without like making him useless? And it just feels like he just has so much in his kit. I actually even think that like maybe his Q ability, his like whip ability, should probably not silence, because it just feels so crazy. If he does hit a hook, then he ults somebody, then he silences them, or he hits a hook and silences them. I just think he does a little bit too much. He brings decent damage to the team, right? Like, he's solid, he's tanky. The only thing he doesn't have is like crazy engage, but you have a flash, so you can always flash ult, hook somebody into a silence, or if you land a nice hook into a silence into an ult, or vice versa. I just think that Richter's a little bit ridiculous. And even in solo queue, like, yeah, you're playing a tank jungler, but you can just get so much done in team fight. Sometimes it feels a little hard to carry with a tank jungler, but with the right ones, you can really get it done. So I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section down below. Again, I'm going to play around really quickly just to show you. I could do this and I would feel comfortable. I really could. I think that this is perfectly fine. I could do something like this and feel comfortable, because I just think that there's so much potential carry potential. I could do this and feel comfortable. There's just this is probably the hardest tier list I've had to make. Like in all the ones that I've done for jungle tier list, I think this was the hardest one to make, because it just felt really complicated to try to put together my thoughts. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I appreciate it for watching. Thank you so much for watching. Drop a like on the video and subscribe for future Predecessor content. As always, be sure to be kind of one. Tell someone you love them, and I'll see you on the next video.